Hello and welcome to IABM TV. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Tony Taylor, Executive Chairman at TMD. Tony, welcome to IABM TV.
Thanks, Ben.
So Tony, can you start by telling us a little bit about TMD?
Yeah, TMD was formed in 1998 to provide software services and product for media organizations. We'd seen over the years a plethora of solutions that were silos for software, for managing content. And in fact, one of our clients at that time, we looked at their systems and they entered the title of an acquired program into 34 separate systems. So when we looked at that, we thought that was pretty poor for the industry. So we came up with a concept of providing what was then known, and I suppose is still known, as a MAM system, but we like to think it's more content supply chain management than media asset management, because it encompasses the workflow and the content and the metadata around the whole thing. So we looked at that and came up with the core concept of Mediaflex, which is essentially the four core elements, the four core pillars of every media business. So that's content in all of its forms, whether it be physical or digital, so tapes, films, which there are a fair amount of those still around, right through to digital content. But nothing happens to that content unless you use a workflow of some form. So unless you integrate the workflow with the content, then you're not going to get an efficient platform. But nothing happens to the workflow unless you use a resource of some form, whether it be human or technical. So integrating those three core concepts of content, which includes the metadata, of course, the workflow, and the resources, you don't get a good system. But if you do integrate them properly, then what you get out of it is a fourth key element, which is analytics. So the core concepts that Mediaflex is based on are content, workflow, resources, and analytics. And that gives you the business platform to start the process of the content supply chain management. So we did that and developed it and has taken it out, and it's been extremely successful around the world since we deployed that firstly in 2003. And now we're deploying it right across the world in organizations. And those organizations range from broadcast operations, so the traditional broadcasters and content owners, people like Discovery, people like Astro in Malaysia, etc., right through the archive space, so people like the National Film and Sound Archives of Australia, National Archives of Australia, and into the government legislature section. So one of the US's top houses actually uses Mediaflex to capture all of the content from the floor and the hearings. And we've just won a project with the DPS Parliamentary Services in Australia to implement the same system. So we're across those three core industry sectors, if you like. So as I say, been going now for 23 years. So yeah, it's a pretty substantial operation.
And there's a recent acquisition as well that I believe you can tell us about.
Yes, there was. We've been looking at being able to expand ourselves for growth, etc., out there in the marketplace. We've seen a lot of consolidation in the media technology marketplace. And we've been looking at that. And one of the things I didn't really want to do was to be merged into another media technology company that was already out there. And we've seen it before. The products get subsumed into the company, the people get subsumed. And at the end of the day, you know, organizations, our clients, and the people in the media sector around the world can quite often get confused by the products that that organization has. So what I looked for was an organization that would allow us to stay autonomous, allow us to stay with our culture, our products, our branding, but give us the support in the back end and invest in TMD as an organization and its talent, because our talent are really what makes the organization. It's the talent that's built the product, it's the talent that's gone and delivered it. So I was looking for somebody that would take that investment of be able to invest in us and provide us the back end support. Lumen Group absolutely does that. It's part of Constellation Software, which is one of the biggest software organizations in Canada. It's quoted on the Toronto Stock Exchange, so it gives us that that autonomy, but with the support and investment to grow the business and create managed services, which is what we're looking at doing. We've already built a number of cloud-based solutions for media organizations around the world, and this acquisition by Lumen, this investment by Lumen, will give us a step up now on that. So that's where we've come from.
Okay, and so Tony, you mentioned it earlier, but let's look a little bit further into Mediaflex before we get into some of the case studies you also referred to. So Mediaflex enables you to acquire, manage, and deliver content. Can you go into a bit more detail about how it actually does this?
Yeah, so one of the key elements that we've looked at throughout is the automated processes that organizations need now to deliver the amount of content that is required out there to be delivered on more devices, on more platforms, for more consumption. So when we used to have just scheduled TV, linear TV, an hour's programming was delivered to, maybe millions of people. So that was a single hour of programming. With on demand now, what you need to do is you need to up your game on that, because each of those 1 million people, say, might be wanting to watch a different hour of programming. So instead of delivering 1 hour to 1 million people, you're having to deliver 1 million hours to 1 million people. So it becomes an economy of scale that you need to put in place. Now that's around automated processes. So the acquisition of content, so getting the amount of content that's required out there, and that may be based on content coming from archives. We've seen over the last 12 months with the pandemic, the reduction in production of content has been significant. So people have been looking at archives to try and find that content, get the value out of that content to continue to provide that the consumers with the content that they want to watch. So the archive side of things, so that if you look at acquisition, it's in the normal course of events, not in a pandemic. You've got production companies creating content, you've got commissioning. So all of those feed into the acquisition part of content. So making sure that's as efficient as possible. So, the delivery of content from studios, you've got to make sure that's as automated as possible. One of our clients, RTE in Ireland, they used to have to check every file that came in from a studio because they didn't know what was actually in it, what in terms of whether it was HD or SD. Now with Mediaflex in place, it's all automated. We can go into the file itself, we go and check what it is, we go and look at the technical data in the header, and we can make automated decisions on where that acquired program goes to next. The same with physical content digitization, acquiring content from physical archives, from tape, etc., being able to automate that through carts, Sony FlexiCart libraries and the integration of that, being able to bring live feeds in. All of that needs to be created in an efficient manner. So the acquisition of that content is key to the rest of the processes. Mediaflex as a platform provides all of those acquisition models and the ability to determine through the workflow, through the decision-making process, the automated decision-making as to where that content goes. Does it does it get rejected back to the supplier? Does it get transcoded into the house format, etc.? All of that can be done automated in an automated manner. So that gives you that efficiency in the acquisition process. Once you've got it, then what do you need to do with it? Well, that totally depends on what the consumption of that media is going to be. Is it going to be on demand content? Is it going to be on linear TV? Is it going to be for international distribution? So all the processes to manage that content, whether it be transcoding, whether it be QC, assisted QC, whether it be manual tasks that need to be put in place, whether it needs to go through the creative processes. And that's one of the differences between the media sector and any other, what we would call a supply chain. So supply chains are all about product getting from one place to another quickly. Now, generally, if you look at the automotive industry, the design of a car, a vehicle, is upfront. It's all in the initial stages. Whereas in the content supply chain, which is different from that, you have creative processes throughout that chain. So that makes it a bit more difficult with the iterative process that you need to do through the management of that as you process that content. So that's really the main difference between what happens in product supply chains that don't include that creative process. So the Mediaflex as a management tool, we have integrations to things like transcoders, all of the major transcoders, whether it be Telestream, whether it be who's the others, FFmpeg, all of the major transcode engines are supported. All of the major QC engines are supported, storage platforms, whether that be cloud. So clearly cloud is a big area these days. And as a platform, Mediaflex is able to manage and process content totally in the cloud, totally on-prem, or as a hybrid approach. So managing that preparation and processing that content is a significant part of what Mediaflex does. Then we get to the deliver part. Now, clearly, that's what are you going to do with that content? The finished content, you may want to push the rushes out to a production house, etc. So it's all about making that as efficient as possible. So whether it's just the content, or if we look at on demand and OTT, then it's the content and the metadata associated with it. So as a platform, Mediaflex provides those processes to push that content and deliver that content to the relevant area, whether it's the origin servers in a CDN, whether it be the origination center, the video servers in a playout center, whether that be to an on-demand platform such as Netflix, etc. So all of that is captured within the Mediaflex platform. And you can license it on a granular basis. So you don't have to buy the whole 9 yards. You've got the ability to license it from different modules, and also license it whether it's on an OPEX or CAPEX basis. We're seeing a lot more OPEX, especially with the cloud these days. So as a platform, it does provide a complete end-to-end solution from acquisition through to delivery.
Okay, and so Tony, I want to touch on some of the case studies that you've already referred to some of them whilst we've been talking, but I think what we're going to look at now really shows the global side of TMD, because you've got so many customers from all over the world. So let's start with YLE. So Mediaflex has been implemented at YLE, Finland's national broadcaster. What was the process of TMD securing this project?
So the YLE, being a public broadcaster in the EU, had to go out to European tender. So we responded to that tender and went through that tender process, which anybody that's been through EU tender processes knows, or any tender processes knows how challenging that can be sometimes. But we went through that. We won the project, and what YLE were looking for was a media logistics platform. So this goes to our point of content supply chain, of managing the content as it flows through the organization. So what they were looking for was something that allowed their suppliers to upload content through a web browser-based system. They were looking for the automated decision-making and the automated processes to take that content and make their operational departments much more efficient. So join up the organization to all intents and purposes. So it's not just the video content, so it's scripts, it's music cue sheets, it's all of those elements that go to make the final operational system. Now, some of those things, the scripts, etc., won't be used in delivering the content, if you like, to the play out or to the on demand, but they will be used as part of the process to take it through. So, for example, being able to search on the scripts is something that is available. So somebody wants to find more content. So although it's a media logistics platform, it actually allows them to find content much more easily. It allows them to deliver that content out to their operations. And really, it is, as it says, a media logistics operation. So that's now been in just over a year, and it is really working well. We have got some enhancement projects that they want us to achieve with other integrations. So integrations to things like data miner integrations. We're already integrated to MediaGenix there. We've already got the integration to the IABM system there. So what we are doing as a platform is that orchestration engine, that media orchestration. So YLE's a really good case study. It's a public broadcaster, similar to the system that we have in RTE in Ireland, which is Ireland's public broadcaster. So yeah, it provides them with a complete end-to-end solution for workflow orchestration.
So Tony, it must be really important to be completely flexible and adaptable to someone like YLE's different needs. You're mentioning all the different integrations there.
It is. I mean, flexibility is and agility is one of the watchwords that, or two of the watchwords, should I say, that we have in the platform. The ability for our clients to design their own workflows. Quite a number of our competitors, when they want, when a client of theirs wants a workflow change, it will have to be scripted or developed or changed from a code perspective. What we've provided with Mediaflex is a graphical user interface that absolutely interacts with the engine. So it's not just drawing pictures and then having to code around those pictures. Everything that you do within the graphical user interface for the workflow composer actually interacts with things. So if you choose that you want to interact a transcode task with the Telestream Vantage, it has the API connection to Vantage. We pull all the profiles in, and it's a single point of being able to manage that process of transcoding. So it's very flexible, and our clients build up their own workflows. We've seen clients that have built the workflows, they've had it in for a month or so, and they're starting to build workflows up with 30, 40, 50 tasks within them. And I'm going to say they're simple to build. The main thing that you need to understand is your own workflow and what you're trying to get from that workflow. So once you understand that, building it is very straightforward within the Mediaflex platform.
Okay, and so let's talk about your work with Wildbrain.
Yeah, Wildbrain is a Canadian content owner and producer. They are children's programming, and they own the rights to things like Teletubbies. They have the Peanuts brand, etc. Wildbrain came to us when they were looking for a MAM system, and once again, it's the flexibility of the platform for Wildbrain that they really are pushing this content. So Children's programming is slightly different in the way that the content is created and is processed, if you like. So they'll quite often get a 22-minute program come through with essentially what is 2 episodes, and they'll want it split into 2 11-minute programs. Now, previously that was being done on a manual basis. What they can do now is through the Mediaflex engine and the processing and building of workflows, they can actually do that on an automated basis. So it's much more efficient for them to manage that content as it flows through their system and goes to play out. We're also looking at some AI technologies with them as well. We actually call some of this content intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. And the reason being is we actually use quite a lot of the metadata from within the essence files themselves to make decisions. So the content is already there. We look at the file, we will make certain decisions on that. So we're using the content essence file to do those intelligent decision-making processes. And Wildbrain have looked at that and have been delivering it out. We're integrated to things like the Spectralogic Black Pearl Rio broker system. We're integrated to Avid, the Avid Nexus system. So again, it shows the integration and flexible capabilities of the platform.
Okay, and so now let's move over to the US and Discovery US. So what was Discovery US's key requirements for a MAM system, and how has the implementation of Mediaflex been beneficial to them?
Well, Discovery in the US has been a long time client of ours. We started working with them in 2008, and the original requirement there, so the phased approach that we took there was they had a physical library of, at that time, about 1.3 million videotapes. So the first thing they wanted to do was to get that under control of a new MAM platform. So the phased approach that we took, we actually migrated their internal library management system, which was an in-house developed system, into Mediaflex, and that showed how Mediaflex could manage the physical library, the physical archive, and then take that through the digitization phase. So managing the ingest process, managing the acquisition process. So again, that's acquisition. And then we went on to the production environment, so integrating to their Avid production environment, and then right the way through to integrating in the playout system and the traffic system. So from that perspective, that was the original project. And quite honestly, it grew fairly substantially, very quickly, to a point where now the automation of processes within their operation is significant. So we are managing the whole content. And one of the comments from one of their senior leaders was that Mediaflex over the last 10 years has orchestrated virtually every process within their operation, their media operation. So the whole workflow, they are doing millions of automated tasks a month on their operation. So it's everything that goes on. We've migrated what was the Miami playout project into the main system in Sterling, up in DC. We've migrated the content from their Singapore operations. We actually have a separate system at Discovery in Europe, in the London Chiswick Centre as well. So we've got both of those sites there. So from a content supply chain management platform for on-prem content processing, Mediaflex has been the catalyst for the last, well, since 2008. They have moved up into the cloud quite significantly, and we integrate to their cloud systems. We are able to move content up into their system. They have an SDVI system for their producers to deliver content in, and we integrate into that. We integrate into their Evertz playout, cloud-based playout system. So there's a lot of integrations and services that the platform provides across the whole of Discovery's operation.
Okay, and so Tony, let's continue our journey across the globe now, and let's head to Australia. So Mediaflex has been implemented at the National Film and Sound Archive of Australia. So can you give us some background to the work they do, why they were searching for a MAM system? And also, the implementation was spanned over 2 years. So there must have been a number of complexities around this and going back to the adaptation of Mediaflex. So what can you tell us around this?
Yeah, the NFSA in Australia was an interesting project in terms of how that came about, and it's probably the only project I can actually turn around and say we have won by going to a trade show. And the whole rationale with that was we went to Broadcast Asia many years ago, and we were a late entry into Broadcast Asia. And we took a stand with the UK Trade Fair support to show out what we were doing, but we took it late, and we took one that had been cancelled by another company. There's a guy called David Watson who was the NFSA's CIO at that point. He came up to Broadcast Asia because they were looking around at systems in general, not just media asset management systems. And he actually came to the stand because he was looking for the company that had previously booked it. When we started talking, he said, "Oh, I'm looking around for these for media. We're going to put a tender out soon." And it just grew from there in terms of actually talking to David. And then they put a tender out, a public tender out, which we were shortlisted right down, and then we won. And what David saw in the Mediaflex platform was its flexibility in its data model to support different types of organizations. So not just broadcast organizations and not just digital content. What he was really impressed about was that we could support both physical and digital content, as well as the migration between those different types of formats. So that was something that really came about, and so as I say, I think it's the only one I can guarantee that we've won from a trade show. Others clearly we have, but that's the one. So what they were looking for was a system to replace something called Mavis, which was their existing system. And as I say, David recognized the fact that what we had as a data model would support their exact requirements in data model. Now, the reason it took 2 years really was mainly around supporting some of their preservation processes and the workflow around that, because the archives are not just about acquiring content, processing it and delivering it out. The archives are about preservation. So it's getting that content in, making sure that that content is in a fit state to be digitized, because some of it clearly isn't, and managing the huge amount of archives that are there, along with some of the physical elements that we hadn't managed before. We were managing physical tapes and physical films. However, some of the things, the artifacts in the National Film and Sound Archive of Australia. So there's the wedding dress from the film called Muriel's Wedding. Well, that is managed through Mediaflex. It's in a box, it's got a barcode on it, we can track it, we can loan it out for exhibitions through the system. And again, when we talk about content supply chain, it is about managing those processes, whether it be a physical article or whether it be a digital article. It's not a huge amount of difference. It has an ID and you can do things with it. clearly as a physical article, you need manual intervention for it. And the workflow allows for manual intervention. So that took quite a long time to implement all of those things with the NFSA's personnel. So yeah, that was a platform that started our work in the archive space.
Okay, let's stick with archiving just for a second, if we can, Tony. So, can you tell us about your Paragon product?
Yeah, so Paragon is an archive-based solution. One of the things that happened was, in fact, the National Archives of Australia were the first client of ours to take the Paragon product. They were looking around for a new archive system, tape libraries, etc. And they came to us, and we were talking to them about some of the other archive systems on the market at the time. So, you know, the Front Porch Digitals, the Mastex, those sorts of guys. And what the NAA was saying was that they're okay if you've got nothing else. But what they felt was that the cost base of those archives were too expensive for the functionality they were providing. We looked at it, and we have a great development team, and we developed a module, if you like, for Mediaflex, although it works as a standalone environment. So Paragon provides all of the integration to the robotic tape drives, the LTO drives. It supports cloud-based storage, and it also supports sort of made disk-based archives, such as the Disk Alto from Disk Archive Corporation. So we support that as a platform as well. And organizations can implement it as a standalone archive solution with integrations to other MAM systems. But it also has tight integration to the Mediaflex platform as well. And we're seeing a great market for that, especially around the made disk Alto type environment these days. It supports LTO, LTFS, so is completely flexible in the ability to have standards-based tape formats rather than proprietary-based formats. So yeah, it's a product that is out there, and we're pushing harder on as well.
Excellent. And so let's go back to some projects, Tony. So TMD's recently taken on an exciting project with DPS in Australia. Can you tell us about this project?
Yeah, the DPS project is the Department of Parliamentary Services down in Canberra. They were looking for replacement for their existing solution, which is recording of the Senate, the chamber, any of the parliamentary sessions, etc. And it's known as a VOD platform because what they're looking at is providing that out on their owned and operated websites, and delivering that content, as well as keeping it for archive and for people within the DPS and the parliamentary services to take that content and use it for their constituents or things like that. Now, we already have a system in the US, in one of the largest legislatures in the US as well. So that system has been in since 2009, sorry, and has been upgraded over the last 12 months actually with new technologies for streaming, etc. The DPS saw that. It was a tender again. So another tender that was out there, which we submitted to, and we won that project. We started work on that, in fact, in January. So it's a very, very new project. We've got implementations going in. We're integrating with some Telestream live capture technologies, and we're integrating to Microsoft Azure Cloud, as well as some on-prem. So it's a very exciting project that the team have just started to embark on. It's due to go live during the Q3 of this year, Q3, Q4 of this year. So yeah, that's a really exciting project. And again, it shows the the areas that we're working within within live environments and live capture of content throughout the operations.
Tony, there must be some different challenges when working with government organisations. So how much did Mediaflex have to be altered to suit both the US and Australian governments?
There's, to be quite honest, not a great deal with regards to the core solution. The core platform is where the flexibility and agility of it comes in. So really, where the changes need to be made are more around the front end, the UIs, to deliver on what those organisations need from a unique basis. But the core platform, in fact, is and again, this goes to as I say, David Watson's comments with regards to when he saw Mediaflex as a platform for what he was looking for in collections management. The core data model, the core solution of content, workflow, and resources is the same across many industries, and that includes marketing, other industries. They are looking for the same sorts of core functionality. Where the changes are really in the UI, and how people want to see the flow of content and want to see how things work in the UI.
Okay, so Tony, let's finally focus in on a couple of your products. So I want to talk workflow orchestration and your product Mediaflex-UMS. So what are some of the benefits of this, and how important is it to businesses? And do you think more and more workflows will become automated?
I think yes. To the last part of that, I think automation is a key part of efficiency in the content supply chain. Now, that doesn't mean to say that automation removes the need for people. What it does is, back to my point about the fact that organizations are having to deliver more content to more devices on more platforms. The economy of scale, it just would not scale up if you had to do that from a manual perspective all the time. That just, it couldn't happen. So automating those processes is a significant part of what organizations will need. But more importantly, it's putting the organization, our clients, people using Mediaflex in control of their system and in control of their operational processes. So, as I said, if the organization can't go in and modify, create, manage their workflows themselves without having to come back to a vendor to actually have them changed all the time, then it reduces that efficiency. So providing the workflow engine is one thing, but providing the control, the command control and monitoring of it is equally as important. So automated processes are going to become more and more important. We actually call it hyper automation, which Gartner actually said was one of the top 20 things to look out for last year in 2020. And what hyper automation is not just about automating the process, but about evaluating how efficient that automation process is, and about using metadata to manage that automation. And that's what we've been doing for many years within the platform. So absolutely, automation is going to become significantly more important as time goes by and as more content is available.
And so finally, Tony, Coeus, how does this product work, and what are some of the key features and benefits of it?
Coeus is essentially is Mediaflex based on a cloud in a data center. We have it as a joint initiative with a company called ERA in the UK. ERA provide data center services and hardware, and TMD provide the software and the support for it, and ERA provide the hardware and the infrastructure platform. And what it is essentially an intelligent archive platform for organizations, post-production organizations and others. So at the moment, some of the clients on the platform are people like Condé Nast, who want to archive their huge amount of content that they have, Jellyfish Productions, and in fact the University of Salford. So all of their student coursework, etc., is archived onto it. All the media content is archived onto it. So it's it is an intelligent cloud-based archive solution.
Okay, well, Tony, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really great talking with you.
Thank you, Ben, and take care.
You can find out more about everything we've discussed with Tony today at tmd.tv.